Welcome to the Coach Zing Show, offering you the latest creative content marketing tips to help you work less, earn more, and help more people. Are you a coach zinger yet? Join the community where the world's best coaches, therapists, authors, and speakers come to discover the latest industry trends and partner with other like-minded professionals. Go to coachzing.com/community to join. And now, here's your host, Doug Foresta.
Hello and welcome back to the Coach Zing Show. This is your host, Doug Foresta, and my guest today is Linda Galindo. I know you'll get a lot out of this episode. Stay tuned, and I want to remind you that if you'd like to get a transcript of this episode or any episode, go ahead and visit coachzing.com/community. That's coachzing.com/community. I'll say a little bit about Linda, bring her right on. Linda Galindo is a consultant, author, speaker, and educator. She teaches leaders how to bring accountability into their organizations to significantly improve performance. She inspires leaders to empower themselves and those that follow them to speak the truth, focus on what matters, and be fully accountable for the results they produce. And I encourage you to connect and visit her at lindagalindo.com. That's LINDAGALINDO.com. And of course, we'll put that link on the show page as well. Linda Galindo, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me on Coach Zing.
Yes, we put the zing in coaching.
Yes.
So I'd love to start with, obviously you've been very successful in your business, and I love your website, by the way, and I see you have a blog here. I'm really curious about what's your favorite way or ways to get your message out to the people that most need to hear it?
My favorite way is to write personal stories, little content-rich stories that have a message that are about something that actually happened, and make sure that I've got those ready in a file because, for example, on LinkedIn, when someone mentions a topic and I can think of a story that goes with it, people remember stories. So as often as possible, I link a story to content that I'm wanting to comment on so that it then leads them back to me.
Beautiful. Can you say a little bit more about what personal story? I mean, obviously, are these stories from your life? How do you choose what stories you share?
Well, first I have to make sure they tether to my subject matter because we are our brand. So Linda Galindo is accountability. If you are looking for accountability in your organization, if you want strategies to hold people accountable, this kind of not very sexy topic, accountability, it's got to be related to that so that people are drawn to it, knowing that a lot of people fear it. So the way to draw them to it is get personal. I'll give you an example of a story. So I am on the Grand Canyon trip with my husband and a group of about 20 other people. And we're floating the Grand Canyon for 24 days. And there was this moment that I thought was completely stunning that I would remember forever that had to do with accountability. At the very end of the trip, I knew what was going to happen. And what was going to happen is we were going to go on a helicopter out of the canyon. So we got to the end of the rafting trip. We pulled up, and I see this helicopter coming down the canyon and landing on a pad that's about the size of your kitchen table. And it was right next to a rock cliff, and I was absolutely frightened. It's a good thing I wasn't thinking about that at the beginning of the trip. I never would have done it. And so we're walking up to the helicopter and you hear the whop, whop, whop of the blades. And there's this man that's probably older than since helicopters were invented. And he's walking down toward us and he's saying, okay, we take you out of here by weight. And so we're going to have each of you tell us your weight and then we'll arrange you accordingly in, groups of 4, however many the helicopter held. And I'm thinking, A, why did I have every one of those dinners on that 6 day? B, I would have hiked farther and longer. Anyway, he walks to me and he looks me right in the eye and he says, okay, I need your weight. And then his next statement was what I will never forget. You lie, you die.
Oh.
So I had to say my weight out loud so that everybody could hear it. And then he writes it on this piece of paper with a pencil and he does math with his little pencil and paper. And then he calls out your name in what group you're going to go in to get out of the canyon. And that, I thought, is such a great accountability story. I'm going to publish it. And so that sure enough came along that I saw an opportunity to drop it into a content provider or distributor, and the story got tons of hits, and it weaved back into my website. So it's things like that happen to you every day, that you just hear a line or you hear a story or you are in a story and you just jot it down so you remember and write it so that people can connect with you, but your subject as well. Because the ultimate accountability, of course, is how much you weigh and whether that helicopter will take off.
I am never going to forget those lines. You lie, you die. That is, talk about accountability, right?
Yeah, there was a second one that I've used too, where they were at the very beginning of the rafting trip. The gentleman's giving us the safety stuff, and he says, "Okay, so if you fall in the water, this is why you have to make sure your life vest is really secure, and you have a life vest buddy that tugs on it to make sure it won't come up over your head." He goes, "So that's great. Your life vest fits and it's working for you, and your buddy says it's nice and tight." He says, "However, if you fall in the water, especially during rapids, participate in your own rescue." And that line just stuck with me for the purposes of being accountable at work. It's not that you just fall in the water and then you float around and flap around and someone fishes you out. You don't become dead weight. You have to help them. And so he gave us the things you're supposed to do to help people help you. And I thought that was another one that I've been able to write up and use. So the content of being your subject and writing yourself into it and then linking it back to everything. So you might have really good stories and this and that's, but if they don't link back to you and where they end up on your website or your Twitter feed or your LinkedIn posts, then you have to skip it. You got to be willing to cut it out.
Yeah, it's the same about, kill your darlings, right? You got to sometimes. Well, I think there's a great content strategy in that as well, in terms of just going out in the world and looking at the world through a lens of what do I do, and how could these experiences tie in and tie back to my own work and to the theme of what I do. I think that's brilliant.
And it helps you avoid what I call magical thinking fatigue. And it's this, and I see some of my colleagues do it, and I'm guilty of it too. But it's that top 2 ways to make 6 figures, the 5 steps to 50-pound weight loss in 2 days, the 3 simple solutions for dumping people who bug you. It's like, okay, that's very magical thinking. You could do it in, it's the drive up window of fixing your life. But unless it's spot on, don't use the magical thinking fatigue method. So, for example, I violated my own little rule about, the top 2, the number. But the number 1 hit on my LinkedIn post was this title: "The number 1 way to hold on to your best performers." And the reason I went ahead and used it is because I delivered in the next line, the number 1 way to hold on to your best performers. Don't make them go find or remember a big list of 3 things, et cetera, unless it's just right there and you can do it. So that one, was 12,000 readers in a very short period of time, whereas my other ones were getting, 500, 200. So I was trying to think, well, wow, why was that one the one that they didn't get upset with me around, this magical thinking fatigue of this 3 simple steps? Well, because if you're going to say 1, 2, 3 or 5 or the number 1, deliver it right at the top, because that's what they're going to go look for.
Yeah. Then that makes a lot of sense. And I think there's a big difference between the number 1 and then, the 5 steps to lose, 50 pounds in 10 days. It's not as magical thinking. What you've shared actually is a good segue into my next question, which is about what you see as the biggest mistakes that people make when they get out there and share content. Are there any other things that you see that really bother, irritate you?
Well, the number 1 thing that bothers and irritates me is what I got feedback on that bothered and irritated the people coaching me to get good content out there and to start realizing more subscribers and more followers. And that was there's this sort of sterile aspect to your content. There are still some of the colleagues that I have that it's almost like their content's the cadaver on the table and you're poking it. They're not in their content. And for the longest time, I could not figure out what they were trying to say. It's like, I don't think people are interested in me personally and my personal life. And it's like, no, that's what makes you real. You know, you're seamless in who you're being and then what your content is. So I've seen where I don't see where people struggle with their own information. So for example, I often tell the executives I coach in small groups that want to be high performance leadership teams that there are 3 things they must agree to before any of this is going to make any sense for accountability to really be a part of their culture. So they're used to hearing, well, do these things for strategic purposes, their tactics, follow through on them, do them. And they're out there on the table. It's like a checklist versus, boy, we're going to get really personal really fast. Number 1, talk to, not about each other. It's a rule. You have to follow that rule or your credibility around accountability just goes out the window. Number 2, don't have counterproductive meetings after the meeting. Say what you have to say in the room. Being accountable as a leader says that we will not divide after we leave this room. We will stay together and be accountable to what we agree to. And number 3 is don't rescue, fix, and save underperformers. How many of you just think, rather than hold this person accountable, I'm going to rescue, fix, and save their performance, and I'm going to be liked, and, I'll just work around them. It's just easier to do it myself. All that thinking. So the top 3 things are who I am. I'm telling them with conviction. It rolls right off my tongue because it's not this sterile checklist of how to do CPR. Open the airway, check for obstacles, and then, breathe into them. This is my experience with it. Here's where I struggle with it. It's hard not to talk about other people when it's something really cool and juicy, and you just got to tell them. You got to, you've got to be your material.
Well, I love what you said earlier about, you are your brand. And it's true that it's extremely boring. And also the other piece is that I can Google just about any information that I want and get something, but it's just too boring. And like you said, I love the image of just they're just poking at your content like a cadaver.
The other thing is stating research when you don't need it. That bugs me a lot. I need to prove to you why women should be on boards more than they are now. Or I need to prove to you why accountability at the top of your organization is the most important step. It's just this endless research on your slides or your data or now certainly make statements and then be able to back them up. But don't put that in front of you, because that's the thing I think the mistake they make is, I'm going to stand here and assert what I know, not what I think and believe, and then I'll have backup for it. But you make people work too hard to get to the nugget, the thing you want to assert and stand for. And so put it out there, and you have to be brave because people will push back. That's when you're getting through, when people are saying, that's bunk, I don't believe it. Show me the research. Okay, here. But for the majority of people, if you don't make them work so hard to get to your point that you can back up, put your point first.
I also want to ask you one of my favorite questions to ask on this show. And you may have already answered it, but it's the funniest, craziest, and most creative piece of content you've ever shared and what the result of it was. I still definitely like You Lie, You Die, but I'm wondering if there's any other ones that stick out for you.
It is a fabulous question. And I think it hasn't happened yet. You Lie, You Die was pretty good. And from that one, I got a sense of what's possible. So here's the thing. The next one, the next craziest one, most effective, something kind of along those lines that you're speaking of, that I guess the term would be that goes viral.
Yes.
Is in between the tip of the pencil and the blank piece of paper. So I live in that creative tension constantly. And this is what I would advise anybody who wants to be using their content to market. Keep pencil and paper nearby. Don't, when you wake up and you think, oh, that is such a great idea, I'm going to write that down, but then you fall back asleep and then you wake up and, what was that? I can't remember. It was so great. It was perfect. You really do need to keep pencil and paper, 3x5 cards, sticky notes, whatever nearby, because those little nuggets of insight will hit you and they'll be just right and you'll know it, but you've got to capture it. So I have a whole file full. And when it's the right one, I notice that I go right to writing the thing all at once. And then I post it. So You Lie, You Die. It was like, boom, I completely had it. And I didn't even lift the pencil from the paper and it got published. So I think that the best one is still waiting to be born.
It sounds to me too like that's a mindset shift, right? About how very different way to go about creating content is to really be on the lookout, both internally be on the lookout and externally in the world, to be on the lookout for that really compelling content to share.
Absolutely. And I'm thinking of the ones that I read and remember are because those people are their content. A good example is Richard Branson, who recently posted why he's not in politics and then what he does do. And I was glued because he was talking about himself and what he does do. It's like I was in his living room sitting there with a cocktail talking to him because he was being him. And I was like, well, that's not what I expected. And I could totally do that. And so I'm starting to do what he does instead of be in politics, a way to be involved. Or Seth Godin, I love his stuff. If I was going to name anybody that, was my favorite, yeah. I just love his stuff. He's the everyday, every person marketer. And he did this talk and he talked about being remarkable. Be remarkable. People will remark on. So what is remarkable about you? And if you do the, aw shucks, I can't think of anything, then, you're not going to ever get your content out there because you want to put stuff out there that is remarkable. And it's usually something really mundane and day to day, like a helicopter picking you up and you have to say your weight. I mean, it's just something so real. I was encouraged along those lines for a long time, and I just wanted to be very private and an expert. And, it's like, you know what? People will totally reach in and connect if you're real. And that's what you got to do.
I love it. I think one of the biggest takeaways from today is about infusing yourself and your personality and your story into your content.
Yes. And focus, and then focus some more. So look, accountability, like I said, it's not sexy and blingy and wow, I'm going to run and go look up everything I can find on accountability on the internet. I draw people into it, I believe, because, well, actually I know this because I am that. And I can make accountability so connectable to what's bugging you every single day. People finger pointing and blaming, not being their best selves. So anything that has to do with accountability, what I find now, and people hear it in the news or they heard a boss do something unaccountable, they send me the story. They send me the thing that they just ran across that said, this might interest you or look at this. And so it's getting through that if you hear the word accountability and you want to know more about it or be better at it, people just start connecting your name with that thing. So what is that thing that you want? And just that one word so that it becomes your middle name or it becomes what's connected with you. I see just too diffused. Everybody wants to be, not everybody. There are people who want to be all things to all people. And what I've really found very helpful is to say, I don't do that, but I know who does.
Well,
so,
please tell people about your one thing, which I know is accountability. Can you tell our listeners what you do, how you help people, and again, how they can learn more about you?
I write, speak, talk, executive coach, influence in the psyche of the United States and now internationally, the concept of accountability. And I'm shifting how people think about that so that we can lower stress, increase our productivity, and really grab onto this idea of engaging people. So here's the thing. I have come upon the realization that we reward not being accountable more than being accountable. And that's the thing I want to change, because it plays to the lowest common denominator when we're trying to do the best possible work we can do. So I teach executives how to bring personal accountability into their organizations, and I do one-on-one coaching for that, and I administer an assessment that I develop to determine where they are and what they need, up to and including maybe not me. So my job is to create this value that often is on a vision, mission, value statement of accountability in real terms to an organization.
And if people want to learn more about you, they can go to lindagalindo.com. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Linda Galindo, thank you so much for sharing your words of wisdom with us today and great stories. I so appreciate it.
I enjoyed it immensely. Thank you.
Thanks so much. So thanks everyone for listening. And in the vein of what Linda shared, I'll leave you with what I always say to you, which is that nothing you've heard here is going to make any difference in your life unless you take action. So get out there and make it happen. Till next time, this is Doug Foresta at The Coach Singh Show.
Thanks for listening to The Coach Singh Show. Need help getting your book out of your head and onto paper? Need help marketing your books or speaking engagements? We can do it for you. Go to CoachSing.com to learn more. Are you a coach singer yet? Join the Coach Singers community, where the world's best coaches, therapists, authors, and speakers meet. You'll get exclusive access to private mastermind calls, where you can get instant marketing help from industry experts. Plus, we'll help you forge deals and partnerships with other like-minded professionals. Go to CoachSing.com/community to join now.